Good evening. Welcome to the 2021 City of Detroit State of the City Address. Ladies and gentlemen, our City Council and City Clerk. President Brenda Jones. President Pro Tem Mary Sheffield. Council Member at Large Janae Ayers. Council Member James Tate. Council Member Roy McAllister Jr. Council Member Scott Benson. Council Member Andre Spivey. Council Member Raquel Castaneda Lopez. Council Member Gabe Leland. City Clerk Janice Winfrey. And now remarks by Councilmember Andre Spivey, followed by the national anthem performed by the Mosaic Youth Theater Choir, and the invocation offered by Reverend Dr. Wendell Anthony, pastor of Fellowship Chapel.
District 4 for this year's virtual State of the City Address. As you can see, things are quite different this year, and what a year it has been. Like other cities across the country, Detroit has had to work through the pandemic, racial tensions, working and learning remotely, economic and fiscal uncertainty, and political unrest. Let me first extend a heartfelt thank you to all the first responders, essential employees, faith-based organizations, community groups, and everyday residents who stepped up in a time of need. Once again, we see the resiliency of Detroiters who always rise to the occasion. Despite what we have been facing, I believe we are beginning to turn the corner with people being vaccinated every day, businesses are reopening, and some of our children have returned to in-person learning. I am very proud of our City of Detroit employees who continue to provide necessary city services with great pride. As the City Council recently approved a series of demolition contracts as part of Proposal N, with vaccinations at TCF every single day, the administration and council beginning our budget deliberations, the city is moving forward. We will hear Mayor Duggan's 8th address from FCA on the east side of Detroit, one of the bright spots of progress pre-pandemic, which is still ongoing. The FCA project has added thousands of jobs, economic development, has brought a renewed interest for development on the east side of Detroit. As we continue to progress through this pandemic, Please stay safe by limiting your large group settings, wear your mask, and continue to social distance. Thank you for joining us, and once again, welcome to District 4.
Color guard, 4.5 step. Color guard. Breathe in.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched was so gallantly streaming, and the riots against the most ghastly blazing gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free, and the home of the brave,
Color guard, hold up. Right. 4.5 step.
lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven.
Greetings. Let us now pray for the city of Detroit. O Lord, our Lord, the giver of every good and perfect gift, thank you for the gift of the city of Detroit. The city like you that emerges from the depths of pain into the sunlight of gain for your people. A city that has been blessed to rise from a fire that destroyed her through racial conflict that divided her. A city that not even economic depression could defeat her. O Lord, whether in the words of your faithful servant, Father Gabriel Richard, who taught us how to put out fires using a bucket brigade, saying, Spirimus meliora resurge ceneribus. We still hope for building things. It shall rise from the ashes. Even your son, the brown bomber, Joe Louis, whose powerful fist continues to stand guard over our city, punching through every obstacle to make a new way, reminded us that you have to be tough and stick it out, or you wind up being nothing. Thank you, O God, for enabling us to rise up and stick it out. You see, we stuck it out through depression and the Great Migration. We stuck it out through white flight and urban blight. We stuck it out through government bureaucracy and a surgical bankruptcy. But Detroit is not only known as the Motor City, it has also been the city that stepped up to the task to create the black middle class. You see, we stuck it out because we are indeed something. Folks are now coming back to be with those who never left. New businesses are ascending. Neighbor is being put back into the hood, making it a neighborhood once again, and your grace is making it all very good. So we pray, oh God, for our leaders. We pray for the people living in the 139 miles from the Detroit River to 8 Mile Road, not to the exclusion of any people, but for the spiritual renaissance and inclusion of the people who have been blessed and are known as Detroiters. While we still have a journey to go and miles to go before we sleep, we know it is you, O God, that has brought us thus far on the way. For thou, O God, who has by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path, we pray. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, our mayor, Mike Duggan.
Well, good evening, Detroit, and to the Stellantis family, which was the FCA family, which most of us will always think of as the Chrysler family. It's remarkable to be here. And I'm going to spend a couple of minutes just doing some introductions and thanking some folks before all of the TV stations tune in. But I want to start with the Stellantis group, to Mike Manley, Mark Stewart, who made this possible. And I remember when this was a vacant field, which was like 18 months ago. And Ron Stallworth, Christine Esterreicher, Shane Carr, you have been partners every step of the way in putting this up. And Dave Minardo from our team, I know, has done a great job. We're here because of Mary Zuckerman, that Ascension Health was kind enough to lend to us so we could acquire the land to do this. And Cindy Estrada and the UAW made this whole building possible. Of course, nothing could have been done without my colleagues. And I don't think we should ever forget what happened. FCA had the ability to put this plant in several different states. They gave us like a 90-day window because they were in a hurry. If we didn't get the land and get the contracts through, they had far simpler options in a lot of cornfields. And the members of council, who I think had stacks of paper that high, I know Council President Brenda Jones stayed up nights reading every single page. But this is here today because of that partnership. And I want to say thank you to those members. And to the clerk, Janice Winfrey, congratulations. We were so proud when people went to court and claimed the city of Detroit hadn't run a good election, that votes hadn't been counted. And we were very pleased at the way that that came out. And so as the stations join us and we start officially, the clerk and the council have been introduced, the Board of Police Commissioners that have been such a big part of our recovery, and a handful of our cabinet officers are here, although we're socially distanced and we have about 10 viewers, which makes me feel like the early house parties when I started running for mayor back in 2013. There's a little bit of nostalgia. But this is just a really special day for Detroit. We are in the first auto assembly plant built in the United States in the last 15 years north of the Mason-Dixon line. We're in it right now, and I was overwhelmed going through it today. It is a marvel. They built a 2.5 million square foot plant in 18 months during a COVID epidemic. And behind me, I don't know if you can see, that's the end of the assembly line where the new 3-bench Grand Cherokee L's will roll off. They go right out past me and then out and do a little test drive. When this plant is going, 250,000 vehicles a year are going to roll off that line. Not built in Tennessee, not built in South Carolina, not built in Huntsville, Alabama, built right here in the east side of Detroit. And for that, we are enormously grateful. What happened in this effort was remarkable. what you see here was the 200 acres of land that FCA said, if you can buy that for us in 60 days, we will put the plant here. And I said, that's all right, but there's one thing I want. The thing I want is I want Detroiters to have those jobs. And I wanted to do something that hadn't been done before. And when FCA said, well, what does that mean? I said, think about the people of the city of Detroit. We feel like the deck has been stacked against Detroiters for years, for generations of racism, for a failing school system, for poor city services. The people of the city have watched factories leave. They watched their grocery stores leave. They watched their neighbors leave. Just once, I'd like to stack the deck in favor of Detroiters. And so if we do this, we want one requirement, that everybody that you hire, you at least first interview Detroiters. And Cindy Estrada says, well, the UAW members, they have a right to bid on jobs. We said, that's for sure. We honor the UAW rules. But every single offer after that gets made to a Detroiter first. And FCA said, if you can give us qualified Detroiters, we'll do that. They signed a binding agreement. And what happened after that was unbelievable. Nicole Sherrod-Freeman and the Detroit Work Group held hundreds of fairs. More than 10,000 Detroiters applied for these jobs. And I was at a number of these fairs where people said, I can't believe my city is fighting for me. And what happened then is the people started signing up faster than the plant was open. So FCA called and said, your list is so great, we need people in our other plants. Do you mind if we start hiring them early? And no, our Detroiters were glad to go to work early. And then the first 2,100 jobs offered at this plant after the UAW, out of the first 2,100, 2,100 are filled by Detroiters. Detroiters moving to the middle class. And then they're about to go across the street and put $1 billion in to the original Jefferson North plant, and they're going to hire another 1,000 Detroiters. We're going to end up with 4,000 people. And so normally at this point I would tell you the story of somebody who was sitting in the audience. But because of our limitations, I have somebody I'd like to introduce to you in a different way, to get a sense of what Detroiters are like and all of those people that lined up. I want you to hear from Rondalisa Carter.
My name is Rondalisa Carter, and I'm from the east side of Detroit. As long as I can remember, my dad was working there. I saw the passion through his eyes. I watched him tear apart that engine and put it back. And I asked him, well, Dad, what about this Chrysler company? He said, it's family. He said, you just have to be there to understand.
Once the obligations are met to the union, the hiring starts with Detroiters first. As FCA hires at that Mac plant, they will always interview from the Detroit list first before proceeding to candidates from other places. It's going to be a plant that truly benefits the city.
I had been going, actually, Detroit at work off and on job searching. And then, like I said, to hear on the radio that, hey, the plant was hiring. Detroit at Work has helped me sharpen my interviewing skills, resume preparation. They were the first steps in making sure that we were job ready. That presentation was everything. They have your back as soon as you set foot in that front door. To get that phone call and to say, welcoming you to our family, that was, when I say living out a dream that came true, I can't explain the joy. Whatever excuse you have that says no, turn that around into a yes and go do it. They will help you. They will make sure that you get, at least get through that door. Just go and talk to them. Go and inquire.
These are the Detroiters who have stayed, as Reverend Anthony said, and are fighting back. And this is part of the sea change, because in 2014, 61% of Detroiters had to leave the city for a job. It's one of many barriers that have held the people of this community back, but we're bringing those jobs back into the city. And the Michigan Central train station, being rebuilt by Ford Motor Company, 5,000 new employees going into that campus. GM reversed their decision and are now building the most advanced plant in the world in what longtime Detroiters call the Poletown plant, which is now known as Factory Zero. And we did it on a smaller scale with the Wolverine packing plant and My Locker with hundreds of apparel jobs. We brought tech companies into the city, not in the suburbs. A new healthcare cancer center and nursing homes that have 200 jobs for people who want to help people. We brought those jobs close to the people who live in this city. And last year, at this speech, I told you that we had formed a Detroit Equity Council, 9 cabinet members who ask every day how we can make sure all Detroiters benefit from the recovery. And from that effort, your city government has adopted a mission statement, and it defines today how we approach every decision. And I'd like to talk to you about it this evening. This is the mission statement that everybody you hear from city government is focused on. Here's what we believe. In America, talent has been evenly distributed, but opportunity has not. And as your city of Detroit government, we think it's our responsibility to fight that inequality. We think Detroit government can be the springboard for opportunity, helping Detroiters, no matter their neighborhood, achieve their dreams. In Detroit, opportunity is rising. And I'm going to talk to you today in a very honest way about the barriers that have held Detroiters back and what we are trying to do every day. Because bringing jobs to the city is only a start. Now the question is, who's going to get the jobs? And what equity means is eliminating the barriers. And so for people who maybe don't experience this, there are a lot of things I'm going to talk about tonight that you may not think about. But 25% of Detroiters don't have a car. And when I started in 2014, a third of the DDOT buses were sitting in garages in disrepair. How do you have access to your friends, to shopping, if you can't get on a bus? Driver's responsibility fees were passed in this state to balance the budget. The only people who couldn't afford them were people of lower income. 76,000 Detroiters did not have a driver's license only because of the driver's responsibility law. That isn't right. Of course, car insurance rates would double in this city, so even if you get past the driver's responsibility fee, you had to pay the insurance. DPS graduates, often when they applied for jobs, lost the job because the time the hiring came, DPS couldn't find their transcript. I want you to think about this. I've had friends in the suburbs say, oh, everybody has an opportunity. This is things you don't think about. How many times in your life did you lose a job because your high school can't find your transcript? It was happening to hundreds of Detroiters who couldn't qualify. Criminal records blocked a lot of employment opportunities, and all of that is layered on the historic racism in the workplace. You put all of those things together, and you say, this is our job. Our job is to make opportunity available in Detroit. Could we be the government that doesn't just talk about equity, that actually delivers? And so we went after this. And so when a third of the buses sat in disrepair, we got help from a friend. Joe Biden was, first thing he did for the city was come up with the money for the buses, and he came out himself when they delivered the last one. We got a quality bus system on the street. We got a long way to go, but at least the buses were running. The Michigan's driver's responsibility fee, I went to some philanthropic groups. I said, we got people ready to work. They can't get a license. We got some donations. We paid off some of these fees. And then, with a bipartisan effort in Lansing, we convinced the legislature to wipe out the law. It was so unfair. Not only did they cancel the driver's responsibility law, they erased all the debt. 76,000 Detroiters could now get a license. And car insurance, you know what that battle's been like. It has been a 5-year war, and I still have the scars. But fortunately, I had a number of allies. Reverend Wendell Anthony and the NAACP, Mark Bernstein, who took on the trial lawyers, the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. We all came together, and we did not stop. When Governor Whitmer got elected, with the help of Mike Shirkey and Lee Chatfield, passed a bipartisan bill that took effect in July. And here's what we know since the law is passed. The people who didn't do much, for the most part, saw a 5 or 10% savings. Something, but not very much. People who shopped around and understood the law often saw 20 to 40% savings. I please encourage you to shop around. and you're going to have more choices. Because of this law, 19 new insurance companies are applying today to sell in the state of Michigan. They haven't been approved yet, but you're going to have more choices than ever before, which is going to allow you to get those rates further. And we're hearing from the industry that there is a doubling of the first-time customers getting car insurance for their cars. And this is what we hoped, right? People entering the workforce could actually buy insurance instead of driving dirty. It is happening. On July 1st, a lower rate schedule kicks in, and the rates will drop again. But this isn't over. We need to eliminate the geographic differences. You really want equity, there should be no redlining in the state. There should be a single rate for the state. And I'm going to make it my business the next 5 years to keep going back to Lansing until we get rid of redlining altogether. It's a moral question. When DPS grads couldn't get their high school transcripts, he didn't get a lot of publicity on this, but Dan Gilbert stepped in. He, with DPS, went in, digitized everybody's records so that when you applied for a job, you can get it. And now we started to get Detroiters filling in across the country. We know unemployment rates for returning citizens are a major problem. And so in Detroit, we said we got to do something about it. If you want to get a record expunged, it's probably $3,000 or $4,000 in a long court process. So we decided the city of Detroit would be your lawyer. And we held these expungement fairs, and I went to a number of them myself. They are a very powerful thing to talk to people who paid their debt, and they couldn't get housing because of their record. They couldn't get that first interview. When a 35-year-old man comes up to you and says, I stole a car when I was 19, and I couldn't be the chaperone for my 10-year-old daughter's school field trip because of my record. I want this record expunged so I can be her chaperone. The next time you start to realize how many different ways we are holding people back and the amount of talent that we need in the city, we need everybody. And so we became the lawyer. And we have now taken the case of 700 people who have a record. We went to court, got them expunged. And within 1 year of the record being expunged, the average wage increase of our employees is up 23%. People can get a whole different class of jobs when their record is expunged. And this is good for everybody. The economy of the city and the region is better when people of talent are able to go back to work. And so we went back to Lansing again, this time with Rep. Graham Filler, a Republican, and a whole bunch of Democrats, the governor, and the head of the Returning Citizens Task Force in the city of Detroit, Councilmember Janae Ayers. And we passed a new law that dramatically eases that expungement. And so I would say to you today, even if you were turned down before under the old law, our team is waiting for you. They'll take your case. We're going to take 2,000 cases this year. Go to DetroitMI.gov, fill out your form, and the city of Detroit will go to bat for you. And as we eliminated each barrier, more jobs for Detroiters opened up. And so we had to expand Detroit at Work from 3 sites to 9 sites to keep up. We're now spread across the city. Who would have thought you would see the day that we've got so many job openings and so many people who want those jobs, we had to expand to 9 centers. But that's what we've done. And so we asked the question then, when we sent the 10,000 names to FCA and they've only hired 2,900 so far, we have 7,000 qualified Detroiters who want to go to work. So we said, what if we go talk to some other companies? We don't have to wait just for one company, Stellantis. I'm sorry, it's going to take a while for me to get used to it. And so Nicole Sherrod-Freeman went around and said, you have to sign a contract with us. We will do the recruiting for you if you sign a contract that every single person you offer a job to is a Detroiter. And 5 companies employing more than 2,000 workers have now signed this contract. From Flexingate that makes parts for the Fords, Dakota by the old Kettering High School that's making dashboards for this plant, Spencer Butcher right across the street, a part supplier here, the National Stamping Plant, and Universal, the Maroon Company, is committed to hire Detroiters first. We've come a long way with the Maroon family when they're investing in our city. This is what we are doing to eliminate barriers. But it isn't just manufacturing. Detroit at Work's now training in 28 different fields. You can go into healthcare. We have tech training. We've got diesel mechanics with Dr. Curtis Ivory, who runs a great program at Wayne County Community College. Hospitality, if that's what you like to do. DTE has jobs that after a brief period you're making $19 an hour. I know you can't tell from that, but that's how they train you to go up into those buckets and trim the trees in the backyards. It is good money. A lot of those folks are $45,000 a year and up. And then we said, how about we bring training facilities back into the city? And so Brian McKinney in Guyanga is opening a trade school for the demolition program on Livernois in the city of Detroit. And for years, we have not had the representation we should have of people of color in the skilled trades. The carpenters and millwrights made a dramatic statement. They are building a training center to train more than 1,000 carpenters and millwrights a year right here in the city of Detroit off of I-96. We are eliminating those barriers and bringing the training closer to home. And this is a point where I have to acknowledge for the 12 years of work Council President Brenda Jones has done, leading the Skilled Trade Task Force, being a constant advocate for opening up these opportunities to Detroiters. And I never thought I'd see the day that the major training center was built right here in the city. But we can't be a city with opportunity for everybody, right? If you really believe this, if you really believe that talent is everywhere, every child in the city has to have a chance for college. Now, we're fortunate. President Roy Wilson in Wayne State has made an extraordinary commitment. Free 4-year tuition to every Detroiter accepted to the college. You live in this city, you can go to a great university tuition free. But we have some other schools that are very good in this state. And so we launched the Detroit Promise. And what the Detroit Promise says is for every single Detroit child who graduates from a high school in the city of Detroit, we will pay your first 2 years of community college for you. More than 1,200 Detroiters are in school right now. And everybody can get their 2-year community college if you study hard in school and you get a 3.0 grade point average and a 21 on your ACT. We will pay 4 years of your scholarship. And if you have a child who's 10 or 12 years old, this program is going to be there when your son or daughter is in high school because the Detroit Promise is funded by a little bit of everybody's property taxes in the city goes into that scholarship fund to guarantee our young people that because they live in the city of Detroit, they have an opportunity that doesn't exist in very many other places. And if you have a youngster who's graduating this year, you should start the process now at DetroitPromise.com. This is what city government everywhere should be doing. How many times have you heard people talk about diversity and inclusion? What we believe in this city is talking about it has value, acting has a lot more value, and we are committed to act. How about small business? Okay, we've seen this for years, right? If you are a person of color and you want to start your business, investment goes to people who already have it. There is no greater disparity in trying to start a business than the racial gap in who can get a loan. And you got to get the property. Who gets the prime property? The people who have the sophisticated real estate background. Again, those who are best off continue to get more advantage. And this is our job as a city. I don't begrudge anybody who can get their own financing or can figure out their own land. That's great. But we want to make sure that everybody has that chance. And who are the first businesses to close when we hit a downturn? Because there's nobody there to help out. And so we said, what can we do on small businesses to erase these barriers? And what do we do in a terrible case where I watched a group of folks in a very sophisticated way lock out every new entrant to the marijuana business in the city? Are we going to let that happen? So we set out and said, I want to level the playing field. I want Detroiters to have a chance at these jobs. And so we started Motor City Match. $8 million in awards, $500,000 every single quarter. And I don't care about the grief I got. I give City Council enormous credit. They stood behind us on this because today 111 Motor City Match businesses are now open across the city of Detroit. 111 open. Yes, 8 closed. Why you would write a report criticizing that, I have no idea. I think 111 out of 119 is a pretty darn good record. And 81% of our businesses are minority owned. And within the next quarter, we will be starting again because we know we have to have equity and people have access to capital. But Motor City Match wasn't enough. We needed more traditional lending. We went to J.P. Morgan Chase and the Kellogg Foundation and said, there is a racial disparity. And Jamie Dimon, the CEO of the biggest bank in the country, looked at the numbers. He said, you're right. They put together an $18 million fund to loan to businesses, either to start or expand, that are men and women of color. 87 minority-owned companies in this city have opened or expanded with $11 million in loans. We are starting to level the playing field. 2/3 of those businesses opened in neighborhoods, which is contributing to our neighborhood corridors coming back. And there's $7 million still there. We are going to come out of this COVID recession. Go to DetroitDevelopmentFund.com if you have a plan, you have a need, because you're in the city of Detroit. There's somebody who's on your side who's going to help you get that funding. The Strategic Neighborhood Fund, we put $35 million. Gary Torgo and 7 companies raised the money for those neighborhood business districts. And we said, we want to do something else. We can get you the money to start up, but can we create beautiful corridors where businesses can survive? And we started on Livernois and Grand River and McNichols, and we're doing it on Kirchville and a number of others. We're building these beautiful corridors. And with Motor City Match and with the Entrepreneur Colors Fund, we had an idea that Detroiters would be able to start these companies in Detroit neighborhoods. And I'm just going to show you one strip, Livernois. And within 2 years of us opening that, more than a dozen black-owned businesses started just on Livernois. And every one of these is still open today. One stretch out of this program. It's happening now on McNichols. It's happening now on Kirchville. We can do this, and we can do it with people from this city serving their own neighborhood. So when COVID hit, that was it, right? Businesses were all going to close. Remember how much we heard that? What am I going to do? And it looked pretty bleak in March and April. But the city stepped up again through DEGC, something we call Detroit Means Business. It said, we put too much darn work into getting these businesses open, get the plywood off all those windows, to have them just close up, put the plywood back up again. And so we supported what was a great federal program, the Paycheck Protection Program, coordinated 5,400 loans to Detroit business, $647 million in loans just in Detroit through that program. Then we supplemented the loans with a grant program and did $15 million in grants to 1,700 Detroit companies, because these companies, they still had utilities, they still had rent. We needed to get them through that cash flow until they can get their business open. And those 1,700 grants, 78% of them went to minority-owned businesses. People who thought when times get tough, nobody will be there for me, the city of Detroit was there for you. 53% of those companies were women-owned, and we got great help from County Executive Warren Evans and Wayne County that backed this program immensely. We're a huge part of why these businesses are still there. And we helped out with store signage and PPE, everything we needed to do to help get them through this, and we were about to come out the other side. And so I've talked for a while, but I want you to hear the story of somebody who started up a business on Livernois, who's been very successful and was hammered and thought she was going to close. I want you to hear the story of April Anderson.
My name is April Anderson, and we are at Good Cakes and Bakes, which is on the historic Avenue of Fashion in Detroit. Good Cakes and Bakes started in 2013. We opened at first as a pop-up, and then we opened as a permanent bakery. Currently, we employ 12 employees.
Have a good one.
Thank you. When the pandemic first started and we had to shut down, state this shelter in place, we were kind of concerned, like, how are we going to be able to still stay open? How are we going to be able to maintain our employees? But the wonderful thing about it was that before the pandemic, we already had a website and we already offered online ordering and delivery. We pivoted and changed over very quickly, and our neighborhood and our community definitely rallied behind us to make sure that we were able to still be here today. The city stepped up, making sure we have masks, making sure we had gloves, the grant money that was offered through the city as well as through the state. They stepped up with offering the COVID testing, offering the vaccine to food service workers. Small business is the heart of the city. Those are the people who keep the city running. It's the small businesses. I am definitely proud to be a Detroiter, proud to be in Detroit, and definitely proud to be an entrepreneur in the city of Detroit in this time right now.
So when you hear April's story, it's the story of so many of our companies. The city can't open your business for you. The people who are the heroes, they're the people doing the work. Can you imagine what she went through? Come up with that business plan, dedicate her life to it, risk every bit of savings she's got, have it all in there and have a pandemic hit, and she hung in there. But this is happening in this city, block after block. We've got Detroiters with the talent and the skills if we can just support them, and that's what we're trying to do. But there is no greater example of inequity, as far as I'm concerned, than what was happening on the marijuana business. And Councilman James Tate deserves enormous credit for being the first one to stand up and say, no, this is not happening. And here's what happened. In 2018, the people of Michigan legalized recreational marijuana, and the people of Detroit voted 2-1 to legalize it, and we have an obligation to respect the will of the voters. Except here's the problem. The guys who wrote the rules that we passed on the ballot, they had medical marijuana licenses. And you know what they put in that provision? Everybody with a medical marijuana license is guaranteed through 2021, and nobody else can get one. They wrote a preference in for themselves. And in Detroit, 46 medical dispensaries were operating when this passed. Only 4 were owned by Detroiters. They had written a law that if we had expanded to the recreational marijuana industry, would have locked African American and Latino business folks from Detroit out of this business forever. And with all the pressure on a 2-1 margin to go ahead and approve this, people want to be able to buy their marijuana, James Tate said, I don't care how mad you are. This is wrong. And I was proud to stand with him and say, you can be mad at me too, and they were. But we went and lobbied and said this, you can wait till hell freezes over. We are not going to approve marijuana facilities in the city of Detroit if Detroiters can't get their fair share. And the state said, we're going to change it. And they gave us the ability to step in. And the Detroit City Council adopted a legacy ordinance. And here's what it says. 50% of all new marijuana businesses have to be owned by Detroiters. To those folks who invested, those 46 operators, God bless you. We're not trying to take anything away from you. You keep operating. You deserve that. You invested that money. But going forward, we believe half of every new business should be for a Detroiter. And so we are in an exclusive window period here. And the way this is going to work is every time a Detroiter is approved, somebody from the outside can get approved. But we are never at any point going to be below 50% Detroiters having these licenses. All the information is on Homegrown Detroit at detroitmeansbusiness.org/homegrown. But this is the inequities that we have to fight to knock down every day. Even with COVID, it's been remarkable what's going on in the city, isn't it? The Illiches are finishing up their office building. Huntington Bank's headquarters is going quickly. Dan Gilbert's Hudson's building is finally out of the ground after, since '81, I think I was there the week Hudson's closed. It's been a long, long time. And those are what you hear about. But the face of the city is changing in another way. Jim Jenkins and Chris Jackson are building a huge building at Woodward and Mack and Woodward West. It's going to look like this. They're getting it done. That's a construction site now. Dennis Archer Jr. is building the new Myers down on Jefferson. If you've gone past it, that's what it is. It's going to look like that. He's managing to get through COVID and get it done. Sonia Mays is building a beautiful Sugar Hill apartment complex, making progress right now. George Namdi and Rod Hardiman have gone out on Grand River out near Woodbridge, and they are building that building right now. We have African-American builders that are also changing the landscape of this city, and they ought to get the same credit because the way this city comes back is we need everybody, and I think we should be celebrating the black contractors that are building this town as well as those who get most of the publicity. But we are starting to see what we need, a city that needs everybody, and we're starting to get that participation. So, I've shown you a bunch of pictures. Have these efforts made any difference? Well, I'm big on statistics. Here's the unemployment rate. When we started in bankruptcy in July of 2013, the unemployment rate was 21%. Before COVID, it was down to 7.6%. It was a remarkable drop. All of these businesses, all of these training programs, all these things together were working. And our poverty rate was the worst in America at 40%. So what do the U.S. Census Bureau's latest poverty numbers show? We always cringed in Detroit when the poverty numbers were released, right? Detroit's rate dropped from 40% to 30% in the last 5 years, the single largest drop in America. Detroiters are going to work. They're getting their jobs. They're starting their business. They do what Detroiters have always done. They've got the grit and the fight. All we need is the opportunity, and we're finally starting to provide it. So where do we stand? We still are very high. We're higher than Dayton. We're a little bit lower than Syracuse and Bloomington and Cleveland, but we're not where we want to be. And even in our own area, we're about the middle, but this isn't where we want to be. It's progress. But that progress, as far as I'm concerned, is not nearly enough. I'm actually not that interested that we led the country in poverty reduction the last 5 years. I'm interested in what we do the next 5 years. And so we have rolled out a new initiative that we call the People Plan. Remember I showed you the strategic neighborhood plan that raised $35 million that redid all of those beautiful streetscapes? We've gone back to the philanthropic community and said, let's put $50 million into Detroiters. We've proven you that our residents have got talent, they've got drive, they don't have opportunity. Let's show you how it's done. And we said we have 4 things that we want to do. And we are starting to raise that $50 million now to put in to our people. First is the Community Health Corps, where we go into the homes of families in extreme poverty. Deputy Mayor Conrad Mallett is leading this to help them get on their feet. High school completion. We have a lot of people who dropped out of high school. Everybody who wanted to come here to FCA, they may have the talent and the drive, but if they don't have a high school degree, FCA, Stellantis won't give them an interview. We got to get folks their diploma. We get paid to learn a trade. We have people who might be in a $10 or $12 an hour job, but they like to get those skills to get a higher wage and be able to get a better house, a higher standard of living. And a program that's been dear to me and I spent a lot of time at, Friends and Family, which are young men, often been in gang activities and violence. And when you sit with them, what you see are smart people who don't want to spend the rest of their lives doing this. And we wrap our arms around them in something called Friends and Family. And so when we envision this, I want to thank our anchor funders, especially GM and the Kellogg Foundation. We've raised almost $6 million out of the gate because I wanted to prove to people this could work. And right now we're doing it. This Community Health Corps is remarkable. These young men and women are going out and they're knocking on doors. They go to folks in extreme poverty. And I talk to them, and the stories are so powerful. They're going into homes with parents, with kids, and they don't have food. They're going to the latest place that's passing out a box. And they're eligible for the bridge card, but the application process is so complicated, nobody ever helped them through it. We're sitting down at their dining room table and helping them fill out the card so they have food coming into the family. They don't have to worry about that every day. They told me the story the other day. We had that big blizzard snowstorm. They went to visit a family, a mom of 4 children just been put out of their house. She was planning to spend the night in her car. They arranged to get her safely into a hotel till they get her permanent housing, came back the next day. The car was under 2 feet of snow, and somebody had hit it in the snow. That mom would have been with her children in that car. This is what the Community Health Corps is needing. The city of Detroit is knocking on your door, saying, we're here to help you, to give you a hand up. And it's something that I'm hoping the philanthropic community will support more of. And then our high school completion program. We've already got 150 folks. So the Detroit Public Schools have run this adult ed for a while. We partnered with them. They said, we'll provide the teachers. We're raising the money, and this is for adults. If you've been 3 years since your graduation date, you can pursue your GED or diploma. And we will pay you $10 an hour to go to school. Now, you think that doesn't make sense? I talk to folks and I say, why don't you get that GED? They say, I'm working washes dishes at a restaurant making $10 an hour. I got to buy diapers. I got to pay rent. I can't quit what I'm doing to go get my high school degree. How is that person ever going to be able to get ahead? And we say, all right, we'll pay you the $10 an hour. Because we know once you get that degree, your earning power goes up dramatically, and 150 people are already in, and the stories are already inspirational. I just talked to one young woman who's on her way to be a licensed practical nurse. Always had the desire to help people, always had the talent, just didn't have the opportunity. But now we're here, and we start you with a free laptop and a hotspot to make sure you can keep up with your classes. We put our arms around you. Friends and family, Ray Winans, a remarkable man. They've got 160 folks, most of whom have been in serious trouble one point or another. I've spent hours and hours with them, and you can't help but bond with them when you hear their aspirations. We've targeted Detroit youth that have facing gun violence-related barriers, gang affiliations, and we support them with housing, with transportation, with training, with mentorship, meals, financial literacy. We call it friends and family because oftentimes these usually young men have not had somebody who was there for all those things. And you don't think these individuals can succeed? 70% of them are already employed and working. They don't want the life where they're having to look over their shoulder. We need to support these aspirations. That's what the city of Detroit is trying to do. We believe in these young men. We believe in their talent, and we want them to be helping to build our city. And then getting paid to learn a trade. We've got 5 different areas. Construction, the guy in the bottom is the guy who's going to learn how to go up in the buckets. We got all kinds of these jobs, and we will pay you while you get the training program. So you're making $12 an hour cutting grass. Come to our training program. We'll teach you how to get up in the buckets. You'll make $19 an hour. But you have to be able to make enough on that stipend in order to make the transition. And that's what the city of Detroit is there for you. Even in the middle of COVID. This is today's billboard at Detroit at Work. We have 5,400 jobs in the city of Detroit. People are looking for workers today. Detroit at Work is training for those jobs. And we'll be there, whatever your barrier is, to be on your side. A city where there's opportunities rising means we have to watch out for everybody, including our homeless. And during the early stages of COVID, Detroit was a national leader. Denise Fair and her team went out. Not only did they test the homeless at all of the shelters, but they set up separate shelters so that if you were positive, you were put in a segregated place so that you could get better and you did not spread the disease to other people. Those housing centers, I think, had a huge part of why we dropped the COVID rate so quickly. And now we're leading on vaccinations. I noticed with interest, they're talking nationally, it's time to start vaccinating the homeless. Denise Fair and the team have been vaccinating the homeless since December and already vaccinated 2,000 homeless and staff. We're making sure our most vulnerable are safe. And then, instead of this philosophy that you take somebody off the street, you put them in a shelter at night, and you kick them out at 8 o'clock the next morning, we believe something different. We believe in permanent supportive housing. We believe in creating housing that you might stay 3 months, 6 months, a year. And if you have addictions, we will have people who will help with that. If you've got mental health issues, we'll have mental health support. If you need help with a resume, we will help you with that. And now the city has built all of these units, 7 different companies, more than 200 units, creating a real transition from homelessness to stability. We've opened a new office of disability affairs for folks who too often fall through the cracks, and our great director, Christopher Samp, who's off to a great start. This is the first time Detroit has had a single office to coordinate information, programming, job opportunities. Every barrier that's out there holding back the disabled, Christopher Samp and the Office of Disability Affairs will address it. And a special thank you to Gabe Leland. This was his vision from day one. He pushed us to create this, and I'm really proud that we've gotten it done. But if anybody's going to have any time to do anything, we've got to keep people in their homes. Courts are open again now on the eviction side. And so we've had people who have been out of jobs for months. They haven't had the money to pay rent. Now, landlords have got their own problem. The landlords have got mortgages to pay. And so we're headed for court. We are working hard to bring in $100 million for the city of Detroit in rental assistance funds. I'm going to stay on it until we get there, and I'm confident we're going to get it, but we already got $5 million. So we partnered with some great folks. Wayne Metro, the United Community Housing Coalition, Michigan Legal Services, and Legal Aid. And here's what we'll do. If you have a family of 4 that makes less than $44,000 and you have a COVID hardship, you've lost your job, you've lost income because of COVID, we will help you stay in your house today. We will get you a lawyer, and we can help based on your income, some portion of your back rent. We will be there for you to get you through until you can get back in your job and we can beat this thing. If you've got an eviction notice, we've made this simple. The city has set up a single Detroit eviction helpline. You call this number and we will be there for you. We've got a few more months of this. I'm telling you, we are going to be out of this COVID shutdown in a matter of months. But in the meantime, we have to keep you in your home. And the city of Detroit is there for you. Foreclosure prevention assistance is already available too. So we have something we call a poverty exemption. I don't know why we call it HP-TAP. It sounds more complicated than it is, but it really isn't that complicated. If you make less than $23,000 a year, or a family of 4 less than $32,000 a year, you're entitled to a whole or part of a property tax exemption. And in large part, we're thinking about people who have worked their whole life, own their house, they've paid it off, they retire, they might be on Social Security. You should be able to have a property tax exemption. You shouldn't have your property taxes put you out of your house. And so the city council passed this program, and we are out knocking on doors right now. But you are eligible to do this. We have cut foreclosures in this city 94% since 2015, with a lot of partners who went out and knocked on a lot of doors in this town. But you have to, at this point, help yourself. We can help you stay in your home. All you have to do is go to DetroitMI.gov, and there's a box there that says Help with Property Taxes. Click on it, and we will get you the help, and we'll explain HP-TAP to you. But if you are of low income, your property taxes should not be a reason that you lose your house. We also now have the assistance to keep your water on, at least through the end of 2022. And we owe Governor Whitmer an enormous debt of gratitude. She came through with funding for us that put us in a position that we didn't have to do this. And Gary Brown and his team went out and knocked on doors. They found 700 houses that had their water off, had nothing to do with not being able to pay the bill. They were living without water because the pipes inside the house were rotted. If we turned it on, it would have flooded the house. We sent teams in, along with the plumbers local, and fixed those pipes, got their water back on. But we got to find a solution by the end of 2022. And Dr. Abdul El-Sayed is part of a coalition. And we're going into Washington. We got great allies in Gary Peters and Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. But in Washington for years, there has been a program that if you can't pay your gas or your heating bill because you are poor, there is federal help. For some reason, there's never been a program that says you can't pay your water bill. You're treated differently. There is enormous momentum in Washington and in Lansing. We want to have there to be equity. We think water is as important as heat and electricity, and so we will be working very hard in the next 2 years to make this moratorium permanent. If you can pay your water bill, you need to pay your bill. Otherwise, it gets spread to your neighbors, and that's not fair. But for those who can't afford to pay their bill, we need to be there for you. And the biggest factor we all need right now, we need the American Rescue Plan to pass. And we're making great progress. And I have to say, I was honored when the president called me and came to Washington, and then when I came, asked me to speak to the country on behalf of mayors to make the case for the American Rescue Plan. I believe deeply in it, and if you've been following, it's through the House, it's through the Senate, it's back now to the House. It's not done yet, but it's heading the right direction. It is really important for the security of everybody in this country. Here's what the plan will do that we are fighting for. It'll be a $1,400 stimulus check for people of middle to lower incomes. It'll be an extra $300 a week in your supplemental unemployment. What you're getting now will continue on. It won't come to an end. It'll give you a bridge till the economy comes back. It's got that eviction prevention funding. And I'm telling you, if we don't land a large amount of eviction prevention funding, I'm not sure what happens at 36th District Court. It will be a tragedy. And that's why we are going to fight tooth and nail to get a large support to get folks back. And I'm going to say this to the landlords, is I have some sympathy to the fact that you don't have rent coming in. However, we are going to insist that if we help pay that back rent and you don't have your house up to code, we are going to insist that you take a portion of those funds and repair that house. And we think that's a pretty reasonable thing for you to get your back rent. Food assistance, utility shut-off assistance, and an increase in the child care credit. This is the boost we need to get through the balance of COVID. And so there is value. The picture with the president was long before COVID. We weren't violating social distancing rules back at Roma's at lunch a few years back. But we have a friend in Washington. He loves Detroit. He loves the grit of this city. If you ever saw anybody just scrap and claw when everybody said he can't do it, nobody's done that like Joe Biden. There is a bond between him and the city of Detroit that is benefiting us enormously. On housing, it's our responsibility to make sure those who are in subsidized housing today aren't pushed out. And we've seen this happen in cities across the country. The federal credits expire on the subsidies, and these building owners can make a lot more money renting them out to folks moving in. We've said at the city that's not happening. Nobody will be pushed out in this town of their home so others can move in. And so we have gone to every single apartment building whose federal tax credits were coming up, and we negotiated 15 to 30-year extensions. 4,000 units. Think about this. 4,000 families who might have been out on the street in the next year or two know for the next 15 to 30 years their home is secured. That's what the city of Detroit is supposed to do. In other places, when gentrification came in and wiped out people who'd been there for 10 or 20 years, emptying out low-income apartment buildings and senior buildings, and the city did not step in. In the city of Detroit, every single time we have stepped in, and we've yet, in the last 7 years, to have one of our affordable housing be switched to market rate. And we've also built 1,000 more affordable units across the city because we believe with the new building, a portion has to be set aside for people of lower income because we believe people of all incomes should live in all neighborhoods. That's what a city is. You have other places you can live if you want to be with everybody who makes exactly what you do and is just like you. There are other places you could live. If you're in the city of Detroit, and I said this from the time I was at DMC, the same neighborhood that has the doctors and nurses ought to have, maybe not in the same house, but in the same neighborhood, the people who are pushing the wheelchairs and the people that are working the cafeteria. That's what we are as a city. And I want to thank Council Pro Tem Mary Sheffield, who has been a force on this issue from the beginning and is a big part of why we have an affordable housing fund. She's a reason why we have been so successful in this area. The city's 110,000 overgrown lots hadn't been cut since 2010. Now we cut them 4 times a year. But what about the neighbors who for years cut that lot next door, but they could never buy the city lot? They cut it, they felt like they owned it, nobody else wanted it, but the city bureaucracy said sorry. So the city had a program they called White Picket Fence, that we're going to let you do it. And between 2010 and 2013, they managed to sell 200 of these lots. You had to have some real political skills because you needed a vote of Detroit City Council from that little side lot. I'm proud of the fact that when I came in, City Council scrapped that program. We set up a streamlined system for a $100 side lot sale. If you own the house next door, you can pay $100. You've been cutting that grass anyway, you ought to get it. We have now sold 16,500 side lots to the neighbors. This is equity. It's the biggest transfer of property in America from a city to their residents. We transfer that property, not from people from the outside. I wouldn't sell it to them. I don't know how much grief I took. You can't buy the land bank property. I said, no kidding, you can't buy land bank property. I'm going to hold it for the neighbors who stayed. And 16,500 times, those neighbors have taken those side lots, and they've added gardens, and they've created neighborhood parks. That's what we believe in as equity. And how about city parks? How does inclusion apply? Remember what 2013 was like? 25 parks in this city were open. They were called premier parks. The other 250 parks were all closed. They all look like this. These are pictures from 2013. Tell me how this is equity when you live in a neighborhood and your park looks like that. What does this say to the children about what their city says about them? So we said, we're not just reopening them. That was easy. We got that done right away. We're going to rebuild them. And we're going to fix a bunch of little parks that nobody heard of, except the people who live right there. that nobody cares about except the mom or the dad and the children who live a block away. And so that's what Doane Park looked like 5 years ago. And here's how it looks today. And we've done this 148 times. That's what Van Antwerp looked like. Here's how it looks today. 148 pocket parks. LaSalle Park now looks like this. Sidney Barthwell Park now looks like this. Lou St. Louis Park now looks like this. This is what our children deserve. And they don't deserve it just in the premier parks. They deserve it in every little pocket park in this neighborhood. Those dots are the 148 parks we've renovated in every corner of this city. And 22 more we're going to get to this year. This is what we believe. Everybody should be treated that way. And as far as what you're going to see in your neighborhood this week or this year, 4,500 speed humps. We have got to slow down the traffic. Our children are not safe. And I would just say to the residents of the city, drive as if it were your kid. There's way too much speeding in these neighborhoods, but we will be putting in 4,500 speed humps. And I can't go to a community meeting where I don't hear about alleys. When I'm with mayors in other parts of the country and they say, what's the number one issue? And I talk about alleys, they can't believe this. But this is what our alleys have looked like. They haven't been cleaned out in decades. When I was a kid, the garbage truck ran down the alley. Since the garbage trucks got moved to the street, they haven't been cleaned. So we said, we think people in the city ought to have clean alleys. And with the support of City Council, we've cleaned 750 already, and this is how they look. A third of our workers are returning citizens, and the supervisor running the program is a returning citizen. We're using the talents of our people that otherwise might have been overlooked. And look what they're doing with these alleys. And your block club can get your alley cleaned. Go to DetroitMI.gov on neighborhoods and put in your application, and we will come to your neighborhood. We are going to get every alley, all 7,000 in this city, over the next few years. I'm going to have to apologize to the local TV stations because I can tell now I'm going to run a little bit long. If you're watching, you might want to turn to their streaming, their live stream service. And I've never run long before, but people in this town are hurting right now, and I had a lot to talk about. I thought I could help, but I guess I didn't want to cut it short. So I apologize to the stations. We're going to double the recreation centers for children this summer. Currently, we operate 12 across the city. We need a quick way to double them. And here's what we found. Churches all across the city have gyms and recreation spaces that are empty for the summer. So we're going to partner with those churches. And we're going to add 12 to 14 more rec centers by using the space that's already there, the ministers and with their youth ministries that are already there, to give our kids more to do. We're also going to see more blight removal. And the 71% of Detroiters who voted yes on Proposal N, we got most of the good neighborhoods with the federal money, but they wouldn't let us do the whole city. The question was, what about the neighborhoods that were left behind? We needed Proposal N because I think every neighborhood deserves to have the blight removed, not just the ones that were already taken care of. And I want to thank Councilman Scott Benson and Councilman Andre Spivey. They were the two who came to me and suggested there were some improvements to the way I could go about this, and they were a major part of crafting Proposal N and the program now. And so this is equity. We just bid $30 million, the first 1,300 demolitions, 7 companies. Every one of the 7 companies is a Detroit company. Detroiters removing the blight. And these are the percentage of Detroiters doing the work. Everywhere from 56 to 100%. This is what we got to do. We're eliminating the barriers. Detroiters go to work for Detroit companies that remove blight from Detroit neighborhoods, that raise property values for Detroit neighborhoods, which makes it that much easier for the next generation. And you're going to see a lot more rehab because the land bank just sold 1,000 houses in the last year, 70% of them bought by Detroiters. And you're going to hear a story that's going to surprise you. How many times have you heard, nobody's doing anything in my neighborhood, I can't make the land bank work, etc.? But there are people out there, a lot of them, who are buying these houses, that are fixing them up. And I want you to see a story that I hope will inspire a lot more. Fella who's a star in the music industry, now he's a star in our neighborhoods, King Yachty.
I want every house to be livable. I want a family to be in every house. I'm an example of a Detroit kid that had nothing, and I wanted to make a change. Peace and blessings, beautiful people. My name is King Yadi. We're here on the block with the Block Development construction company that's catered to training the youth. I started this company with my brothers and community people that actually stayed on the block, and we're here to develop many properties that we can. I actually grew up on this street. This is Archdale Street, and we plan on taking every vacant house on this block and revitalizing it. We acquired 4 houses through the land bank. Me being a general contractor and understanding the business, I see these houses as something that could be done and could be renovated. A lot of people just see them as an eyesore or a vacant property or something that need to be torn down. I knew exactly what we could do with them, and I just wanted to come help. My first house just got me into the groove. Everybody came out, the block came out, just to help and just volunteer.
He was here by himself one point in time, and so we came over and helped him.
By me being licensed, it was like, yo, I can teach you a real trade or a real skill. 2 years, we have made change. I see less police activity. We see no gang activity.
It feels good making positive difference in my neighborhood.
This is my first time meeting the mayor, thanks to Ms. Robertson down at the mayor office. She connected me with him, and he wanted to come out and see actually what we was doing. He actually came to the block by himself, walked through my houses with me, walked down the block with me, and he was so open-minded to understand and see our vision, and he fell in love with what we was doing. I really want to be the face that said we run Detroit back. Detroit built Detroit. Detroit saved Detroit. Detroit is Detroit. We got one block here. I got guys on the east side want to do the same thing. I got guys in Brightmoor want to do the same thing. So it's up to me to sit down with these guys and pass on my connection and my knowledge. These houses have been vacant for 13 years. These guys is 13 years old. So since they was born, these houses have been vacant. In only 1 year, we got these houses livable and up to code. I'm an example of a Detroit native. This is my environment, and I don't want to make money and leave. I want to make money here and circulate it through my community.
Walking through those houses, 12-year-old Deonte showed me how to do drywall. This young man is going to be a real estate mogul. He shared with some things that he was doing before that were on a different track. He sees a future in rebuilding the city. We have folks who look at these abandoned houses and see potential. They don't see houses to be written off, just as they look at the lives of the people who live there. Those aren't lives that should be written off. There is enormous potential, and we are going to support that. And with Proposal N, here's what you're going to see this summer. The reds, our houses are going to be burned out and demolished. The greens are houses that are going to be secured. So people like King Yade and Pastor Wilkerson and so many others in this city can fix them up and make them into homes again. And here's what I mean by equity. This is the change last year in home sale prices. Every place in the city was green. Home sale prices went up from the year before. 189 out of 194. This isn't some little strip in downtown and midtown. This is east to west to southwest. This is what we can do. But it means we got to fix the parks in all the neighborhoods. It means we got to remove the blight in all the neighborhoods. It means we got to clean the alleys in all the neighborhoods. It has to be every neighborhood. And that's the way we're approaching this. When a project's going to affect neighbors, we do this in a very different way, as we did last year in the long-abandoned state fairgrounds. Amazon came in. This is remarkable. 4 million square feet, 1,200 jobs. They don't want any tax incentives. This is how far Detroit's come, that we can get major investment and no tax incentive. But the neighbors who live off of State Fair and to the east of the fairgrounds, they weren't really happy about an abandoned property, but they wanted to know what was going there. And so this is what I did. I went last summer and sat in the backyards with the neighbors. And I said, what do you want to see? What's your vision for the neighborhood? We need these jobs. And the neighbors came out, and they argued and pushed and came to council and said, we want Amazon. And Councilman is sitting behind the tree, but Councilman Roy McAllister, the picture with a little brother, was out at every one of those backyards with me. And as Amazon rises on the fairgrounds, we also are taking care of the neighbors, because we have agreed, out of the proceeds of the Amazon, to build 2 neighborhood parks for the children by where they live. The neighbors are helping design the parks they got. So they got rid of the eyesore on the fairgrounds, and they're getting parks for their community. And we're being very sensitive. And so we're looking, there's a lot of emotion. I saw concerts at this band shell. A lot of folks remember this, and they said, can't we do something about the history of the fairgrounds? And I'm very glad to say that my partner, Roy McAllister, has been emphatic that we are going to save this band shell. And we've done physical assessment, and we are going to move this band shell to another park. Councilman McAllister is suggesting Palmer Park, which is going to be our first choice, and we're going to talk to the neighbors. If the neighbors want to go to Palmer Park, if somebody else wants it, we can do it there. But imagine having small concerts and activities. But this is what we do. We listen. We can't do everything that everybody wants, but we can do this in a respectful way, and I think we got the right result. On the Gordie Howe Bridge, which is going to be great, it came in, but what about the neighbors that are going to be left behind? Those folks in those houses, they were going to be staring at concrete. Nobody took their property. They were outside the boundaries. They were just basically screwed. I mean, there's no other way to put it, except the Canadian Bridge Company needed some vacant land in Detroit, and I wouldn't sell it to them. And it turns out they can't condemn public property. And so we ended up with a deal for overall $30 million, but $20 million to help fund those who went behind. And this Southwest Coalition has been terrific in doing that. And here's what we did. We said to the folks, if you don't want to stare at this concrete, you want to move because they've changed your neighborhood, that's fine. We'll help you if you stay in Detroit. We will rebuild a house anywhere you want in your city, and you can move in. And the folks in Southwest said, I like that. And so we moved Delray families into beautiful homes like this. 46 families have moved into their new homes, are thrilled with where they are. 52 more families are in the process of moving. We didn't say, sorry that you got a bridge. We said, we care about you, and we're going to watch out for you, and we're going to give you an opportunity. And I want to thank Councilmember Raquel Castaneda-Lopez, who has been at every single one of these community meetings, advocating for this community since the bridge was first proposed, and has a huge part of this. And we're also saying to the people of Southwest, you are not forgotten. We are pushing the Ralph Wilson Jr. Park with the Wilson Foundation. It's going to be beautiful, built over at Rosa Parks. Then we've gone down to Riverside Park, which looked like this not very long ago, but now, in the shadow of the Ambassador Bridge, looks like that. The Forgotten Park is now a jewel of Southwest Detroit. And we have fought the riverfront battle all the way down Southwest. When Marathon and other companies tried to store open coke breeze, we took them to court, we stopped them. And you cannot maintain the open coke. We protected that community. And when Marathon tried to raise the emission levels, we went and took on the DNR with quite a coalition. I'm not sure how many times Abdul El Sayed and Rashida Tlaib and I have been on the same side, but what I learned was we're all on the same side, we win, because we stopped the expansion of the emissions on Marathon. We've done a great deal. But as we reach our one-year anniversary, I keep coming back to what we think about every day, the 1,856 neighbors that we lost, and Benny Napoleon, who we lost just a couple months ago, who meant so much to this city, meant so much to me. And that pain is going to be with us. In some ways, COVID brought out the best of us. Our rec department pitched in, provided 1 million meals to family, and the churches across the city distributed 1 million more. Churches learned to set up their own test sites. It was amazing the way we pitched in. And our frontline workers who went out there during the height of the COVID battle, the bus drivers, the firefighters, the EMTs, the police officers, really all the city employees. We appreciate their dedication. And most of our city employees gave up their pay raise last July because of the financial trouble, and we didn't want to have anybody fully laid off. And I'm pleased to be able to say to you that this July you'll get the next pay raise, and we do appreciate you for what you've done. Our COVID response rate dropped the death rate faster than any city in America. Everybody at Ashley has talked about this. But we have to talk about what happens when we reopen. And people all talk about we're going to reopen the restaurants, we're going to reopen the stadiums, we're going to reopen the schools. We're missing something pretty important, and it's affecting every single one of you, and as I talk about it, you realize what it is. We have to reopen the criminal justice system. The criminal justice system in this country has been shut down for a year. And we are feeling the implications of it in the gunfire that you're hearing in your neighborhood and the stories you're seeing on TV. We had a strategy. It started with ceasefire. This is a meeting in a church with gang members. I would go, the U.S. attorney would go, the police chief would go, the prosecutor would go. We would talk face to face. We'd talk in a respectful way. And then we'd sit and have dinner with 30 or so. And every time we did this, we do this once a month, 9 or 10 would go sign up for our friends and family program and get onto a different track. We obviously haven't been able to do that for the last year. But you look at all the ways the justice system was shut down. The court stopped holding jury trials. Prisoners were released from jails. Prosecutors slowed the warrants. Judges were told to minimize bond. The whole parole and probation system with face-to-face visits, home visits, it just shut down. And none of us could hold our ceasefire meetings again. The homicides in the city dropped significantly, nearly 30% from 2012 to 2019. The strategies were working. We were working together. But last year, we saw a 20% increase. And we have to deal with this. And I want to be clear, for everybody out there committing a gun crime, the court system may be stopped today, but the charges aren't stopping. We know what's going on. Detroit had a 20% homicide rate. The rest of the country, LA 36%, Chicago 56%, Milwaukee 96%. This is happening across the country because the criminal justice system is shut down in every city. Chicago and Atlanta and Milwaukee didn't forget how to police. But when your courts are shut down, your prosecutors are shut down, your probation is shut down, we have folks who think there's no consequence. And we now have 2,200 gun charges backed up in Wayne County. This is the reason you're hearing the gunfire. But I have reason for hope. And we've been talking together, and Chief Craig and Warren Evans and I will be pulling together this whole system. Because the sheriff, they've had to triple the people on monitor. The states had to cut all of their programs. And so here's what we're going to do. On March 22nd, 36th District Court Chief Judge Bill McConnell is going to take the lead in handling the docket of the 2,200 backlog gun cases. He's going to make sure they move. They'll be treated fairly, but they're going to be prioritized and moved. Judge Tim Kenney, when those cases go through to the circuit court, is going to assign more judges to adjudicate and try those cases. So you can't think for a second that justice is not coming. Prosecutor Worthy is totally committed to prioritizing her efforts to getting this going, and I'm really pleased that County Executive Warren Evans has committed to provide funding, and the U.S. Attorney's Office has given Prosecutor Worthy additional funding to get the gun prosecutors in there to help her do that. The sheriff, the new sheriff, Raphael Washington, who I've talked to, is very anxious to be able to reduce the tethers for the highest risk individuals. The chief is going to focus the DPD resources on moving on the prosecution of the cases, and our acting U.S. Attorney, Mosen, has promised me that she will be with me at the next ceasefire meeting as soon as our health director, Denise Fair, tells us we can do it and we can get back to what we were doing. I want you to know this court system is going to reopen. There is going to be accountability, and we will get this violence under control. But our return to economic health and public safety depends on one thing, and it's vaccines. Detroit Health Department, I don't have to tell anybody here, they've been amazing. 120,000 vaccine doses they've administered directly. But it's not enough. If we want people back to work, we want people not to be afraid of being evicted, we want to get the criminal justice system going, we want to get the restaurants open, we have to get vaccinated faster. And so here's what you can expect. On March 22nd, every Detroiter over the age of 50 is going to be eligible for vaccine. I'll tell you that ahead of time. Usually I wait and see what our backlog looks like on our phone calls, but it's coming. In April, I expect this to be to every Detroiter with a chronic medical condition, and I want to see us with everybody whose job requires them to go to work. I want everybody who has to be out in the workplace to be able to be vaccinated by May. I really do think we're going to be opening up eligibility to everybody. But in order to do that, we are going to have to open a second major vaccine site, and it will be open later this month at the Northwest Activity Center on Myers. And we're going to offer the Johnson & Johnson one-shot vaccine with the space inside. Now, I know I said some things about Johnson & Johnson. It was my fault for not having done more research than I should have. But after having done that research, it's obvious that the record Johnson & Johnson has at the height of the pandemic and operating in South Africa and South America and Britain, that it is a highly effective shot. And so what I want to do is give every Detroiter two choices. You can go to the main one-shot center down at the Northwest Activity Center, or you can come down to TCF for the two-shot vaccines. And then we're going to build out to the community. And we're going to have all kinds of community events at churches and rec centers where you can either have the one-shot Johnson & Johnson or the two-shot Moderna and Pfizer. We are going to extend it, but we have to do this. Detroit led this country in dropping COVID infection rate. We are not leading this country in getting vaccinated. And if we are going to drive the comeback of this city, it's going to be important. Take your friend, take your neighbor, and let's get vaccinated, and let's get the city going again. We're going to remember who we lost, and this was the beautiful memorial done for Belle Isle of all the individuals that were lost this year. If we don't get the vaccines done, we're going to be going to funerals that just weren't necessary. And so we have a lot to look forward to in this city, lots of opportunities. Let's get vaccinated and let's get Detroit back open. Thank you, God bless you, and good night. All right.